Welcome everyone to our digital exclusive conversation. I'm Shivani Gupta, Senior Associate Editor, CNN News 18. I'm joined by Tushar Gupta from Swarajya Magazine and also Shashank Saurav, who's a public policy analyst and a CA himself. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. A big decision taken by the Narendra Modi-led government today. The Prime Minister himself announcing at 9 a.m. today that the three farm laws are being repealed. They're being taken back. Even though the Prime Minister went on to explain why he's taking that decision, the larger question that is also arising out of this decision is what does it mean, not just for the reform of the agricultural sector in India over the in the coming years, but just reforms in India. Remember, the land acquisition bill was also taken back in 2015. That was another big reform that almost everybody understood and accepted was required, but was not possible. So let me go across to Shashank first. Shashank, you're a public policy analyst. Reform is always perilous in India, especially politically, and possibly these reform laws also turned out to be the same for the Narendra Modi-led government. How much impact do you believe this decision could have on future reform in India?
Yeah, Shivani, so certainly this is going to derail the pace of the reforms because we have already seen in the past whether the farm agitation or whether the land acquisition bill, everything goes just in haywire because of the policy issue, not per se, but the politics. So definitely the farm reforms, farm laws were something which were meant to liberate the farmers. There was nothing against the farmers in these bills. There could be a couple of questions which could have been discussed, like there could be a provision in the law that the private player will not buy something from the farmers which is below the MSP price. There could be some mechanism to settle the disputes, the dispute resolution mechanism. There could be some enhancements that could have been done, but there was nothing per se in those farm laws. But still, after almost a year, the government is taking a back step. Then this is giving a boost to someone who doesn't want India to develop. Point number one. Point number two, this is giving a template to the agitators, the left leaning politicians, or the vested interest groups to just use this in future as well. And which is going to happen. We saw this in CAA, we saw this in farm laws, and this is going to happen in future again because I just saw a tweet from the farm leader Rakesh Tikath. He said that despite of assurance from Prime Minister, he's not going to take back his agitation. It means that it was never about the farm laws. It means that there was nothing against the farmers in the law. It is crystal clear because the government was ready to discuss clause by clause. It went to the farmers multiple times, but nobody came to government saying that please scrap this particular provision of the act, and then we are happy with this. There was just single word MSP. And the another point of agitation was the contract farming. Let me put you two things. In India, is MSP guaranteed now? The answer is no. Is MSP going to stay? The answer is yes. Because if you should see the legal provisions, the Food Security Act 2003 says that central government will keep procuring the food grains for the purpose of public distribution system and distribute the food grains to poor and marginal sections of the society. If this is a legal provision in the Food Security Act, can any rational person in India believe that in a populist country like us, these provisions are going to go away? The answer is no. So MSP is here to stay. But the government failed in its communication strategy. And now we are paying a price. Similarly, in the contract farming, in 2013, Punjab state enacted a farm law for this contract farming. Nobody made any statement, no outcry, nothing happened. It's been 7 years. Even in 2003, when BJP-led government by Vajpayee promulgated some draft paper, the discussion happened. And then in 2007, on the recommendation of Swaminathan Commission, the Congress government came up with a policy statement that the contract farming should be promoted. When the Congress said in 2007, when the Congress ruled a state in Punjab did in 2013, although at that point of time, Shiromari Akali Dal and BJP were ruling the Punjab, but yeah, when this Captain Amrinder Singh government, the law went as it is, it got implemented, it went smoothly. When you are in your state doing this, how it become anti-farmer law when this is done by the center? And we all know that this
Politics. Politics and the duplicity in the opposition to farm laws. The larger question now is they have been repealed. So what happens next? Can India overcome this setback, Tushar? This is a setback, no doubt, because the
Yeah.
farm laws brought reforms that policy experts and agricultural experts, everyone believed was the natural course of action, but they have been derailed.
Shivani, just purely by numbers, agriculture today contributes 16 to 18% to our GDP. From an employment point of view, 40 to 50% of the population directly and indirectly engaged in agriculture. So when I talk of these three farm laws, I talk of something that had the potential to transform our GDP growth, at least for this segment. 20% GDP growth being impacted by three farm laws. So when we look at these three farm laws, the mistake, I agree wholeheartedly with Shashank, the communication strategy has been dismal, it's been bad. Now, when we think of private farming, people reduced it to the likes of Ambani and Adani coming to the farmer, procuring the crop, and going away. It's not that. There is the question of technology. There's the question of private sector investments. There's the question of logistics. There's the question of warehousing. To give you an example, I was in Kashmir recently, and it's the hub of the best apples of the world. And they told me very simply that we grow 2 lakh tons of apples every year, but we grow 20 lakh tons of apples every year. But the cold storage facility we right now have is only for 2 lakh tons. This is where the private sector could have come in. Now, if you're asking me for a long-term impact, yes, it's a huge loss, and the loss is bigger to the farmers. Punjab farmers today are celebrating Punjab by virtue of its geography, closer to Delhi, closer to UP, with a state of 200 million people, closer to Rajasthan, such fertile land, rivers flowing, very good. They could have made a killing out of these farm laws economically. They could have become rich, and Punjab is not on its way to prosperity right now. It's declining.
Mm.
So they have done well. And on the question of farm laws, see three things. One was about the private player participation. The government, exactly almost a year ago on December 9th, told the farmers that if you're so wary of the private players, we'll have them register with the state authority where they pay a tax which goes to the development of the APMCs. Shashank already elaborated as to how any government will not stop procuring the crops because of the National Food Security Act. Then there was the provision of them going to the courts also given to them, even if it's not in favor of the farmers. Then there was the question of pricing. The law clearly states that if today I am a farmer, you are a company, and you offer me a price that is less than the prevailing MSP in the market, I can decline the contract with you without any legal ramifications for me. So even if I look at it from an ease of doing business point of view, the law was more pro farmers than pro business, and yet the people have a problem. Now the last point is MSP. Rakesh Tikait has already said that I'm going to ask for MSP for everything under the sun. Now, what if the fruits and vegetable sellers and cultivators tomorrow start protesting? We want MSP. Does the Indian state have that much fiscal room to procure everything on an MSP? Because that's going to be the next obvious demand. They have smelt blood, they have smelt weakness on the part of the state. So their next question would be, boss, we want MSP on fruits and vegetables. We don't care about the quality of the produce we grow. We don't care about the volume of produce we grow. We don't care about the environmental implications of what we grow. We want an MSP. That is the danger part. So from a reform point of view, this is going to have a very long-term cost, which I'm very afraid of. I want to
So
be
as
proven
far
wrong, but
farm laws are concerned, or the intention or the reforms that these farm laws were bringing, Shashank, are they as good as dead? Because politically, it is being believed that possibly for the next 10, 20 years, no government will attempt this.
Yeah. So Shivani, if you talk about the intention, as I have already said, the farm laws were quite good. There was nothing against the farmer in those acts, on those legislations. But the taking a back step, we saw it in CAA. CAA has been implemented, rules are not yet framed. We all know why the rules are not yet framed, because of the agitation, Shaheen Bagh episode and all that. Same thing happened in this farm laws. Now they have tested the blood, they are handed out with the template, and any government will be fearful of them. This is my point. Now, if the Modi government wants to salvage the situation, if they want to salvage the situation, they must give a clear warning to all the agitators that now please go away, clear these roads. Now, what you have said, we have done that, and please take your agitation back. That should be a clear warning. We saw what happened on the Republic Day. Now, if they are saying that we don't trust PM, let the Parliament repeal these laws. Okay, fine. PM has given a promise. We trust the PM. Now go back to our homes. You see, you see the entire. If you start connecting the dots, in Jan itself, Supreme Court said that these farm laws are not going to be implemented. There's your full stop. Farmers should have taken back the agitation, but no. This agitation was politically motivated. There could have been some vested interest group, quote unquote, inside India, outside India, who are fueling these agitations. We are seeing what happening in this Khalistan movement in UK. We have seen who is funding them. We have seen what kind of campaign is running outside India. So, given all these geopolitical dynamics, this economics takes a backseat. These farm laws were something which were meant for economic benefit of the country, economic benefit of the farmers. But given the political dimension and the geopolitical aspects, these economic aspects have taken a backseat, and this is going to drive us in future as well. Because two major reforms we have seen in the past what has happened, and I think every government will be fearful of this entire agitation which is happening
Yeah.
now in the temple
And
as well.
also because, just to add to what you're saying, Saurav Tushar, also because this is a government that is in full majority.
Yeah.
Very few governments have won the kind of mandate that the two terms of Narendra Modi-led government have won. If they can't push through reforms, then you wonder whether they will be pushed anytime soon.
Shivani, this is not some corporate tax problem. This is not some GST problem that impacts a small population. We are talking about 50% of the population directly and indirectly engaged in agriculture. What suffers? The government ethos of privatization suffers, infrastructure suffers, logistics, technology, investments, and employment. All of this suffers collectively for a very, very major part of the population. And look at the impact it has on GDP. We talk of double digit growth. We talk of India becoming a 10% growth economy. We are barely competing with China when it comes to GDP growth right now. But then we want to kill such laws which actually have the potential to transform the GDP growth in India. What hurts right now is not that the laws have been taken away or the government is, on the political backseat. That's okay. That's, a to and fro that happens in everyday political life. What feels wrong is that this was the biggest reform since 1991. This reform could have been the legacy of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, not to take away from anything else he's done. He's done a lot with the GST, with the JAM, Trinity, with Kashmir. All those things are separate. This would have been single-handedly the biggest legacy for Narendra Modi, that he changed the Indian agriculture altogether, which had been constrained is the word I would use, by mindless socialism for the last 70 years. We've given farmers MSP, there are still suicides. We've given farmer all the subsidies, there's still suicides. We've given them free water, free electricity, still there are suicides. They are not tax-paying citizens. Even if they make 1 CR every year, there's still farmer suicides across the country. So this is why this reform was very, very important.
So, do you believe that none of this reform that was enshrined in these three laws can be brought in drip by drip? Maybe the problem was that they came
I,
together and everybody was shocked, or a certain community of the farmers was just too taken aback. It was too much to take for them. Maybe
I,
in
I,
smaller steps.
One thing
I,
could have been done, Shiva, though
Yeah,
there was.
Shashank first, then Shashank.
I'll tell you the
Go ahead.
irony of all this. I'll tell you the irony of all this, Shivani. 94% of India's agricultural producers anyway going through the private sector. It
Yeah.
did not change before today. It won't change after today. It's anyway going. What these laws did was that if you're running a business, let's say, and you deal with the farmers of Tamil Nadu also, of Punjab also, of Gujarat also, of Assam also, you have a common set of laws to work with, which increases your trade potential. So it's not like anything is going to change. The irony is people are opposing something that is anywhere there. Do you think there is no private sector procurement in Punjab? ITC, which is a big supporter for Ashirwad Atta, to give an example, procures wheat from Jalandhar. It's a private company. So it's already anyway happening. That's the whole joke. In Himachal, if you look, Adani is anyway procuring best apples from Kinnaur. So any of it is already happening. That's the whole irony of it. But for
Yeah.
them, I mean, Shashank, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Shivani, I agree with Tushar. There could have been a consensus building exercise by the government. The laws, people say that they were made in haste. All of a sudden, there was an ordinance, then this was not discussed properly in the parliament. There could have been some discussion around this. This could have been put in the public domain, and industry experts, the farm sector experts could have been brought on a board, and that discussion could have happened. But still, the law per se was not bad. The intent was
Of
not.
course.
And if India has to grow, then it can't leave behind 40% population, which is dependent on agriculture. It
But can
can't.
it
Yeah,
Let's look forward. We've discussed all of this. Let's look forward. Can some of these good aspects of these laws be still brought in, maybe with greater consensus and one by one? Or do you believe
that
that this
should
is.
happen. I think government should not get a cold feet. They should continue to pursue the reform agenda. And
Hmm.
now, since they have understood, they have also got a lesson, I would say. The central government, despite of all their majority of more than 300 seats, they have also got a lesson. They should approach in a consensus building manner. The law should be discussed well in advance. This should be put in public domain. All the concerned stakeholders should be taken on board, because in that case, you will have someone to back you. There are many farm organizations. If you bring some of them on board, there will be at least some consensus, and somebody will be there to back you in case
Hmm.
there are vested interest groups who goes on
Who
rampant.
tried?
Yeah, who goes on
But
just
the
goes.
that sometimes that also has gone in the past and has possibly gone in with this also, that there is no public policy sustainability, or there is no structure which can be depended upon, you know because you take some measures, then you take them back, so the message to the corporate sector is obviously very poor, Tushar.
So, Ani, this problem is India is not new. We
Yeah,
lack
yeah, yeah.
think.
That's what I
We
said, it
lack
has happened before, and
because
now
we
this.
can't expect the politicians to be expert on each thing and everything. They could be expert in social engineering. They could be expert in few things, but they can't be expert in everything. So we need
But
think tanks, and that's the
Shivani,
problem
talk
which Modi
to
Yeah,
resolved.
talk of the corporate sector, look at
Hmm.
the likes of Amazon, which are investing big time in India. Look at Reliance Retail. Retail is something that will always have a market in India. Recession or growth, good days or bad days, festivals or no festivals, Indians are going to eat food. Right now, also, your best e-commerce websites are procuring for the farmer. So this has a lot of investment potential. I keep coming back to this point that in our haste, all these observers, stakeholders, the farmers themselves reduce these three laws to a company coming and procuring from the farmers. That is all. It wasn't it. It
No,
had such
but
great
what is the
investment potential. And
thing
now,
that
no, no,
what
just
that has gone to the corporate sector, that
yes,
criticism of India is that there is no dependability of public reforms.
yeah, now there's a national monetization pipeline. There's a national infrastructure pipeline. We're talking about sovereign funds coming to invest in India. Now, they would also be worried that what if tomorrow protest breaks out and the project is completely destroyed for that simple reason? What is your physical infrastructure is threatened? Because if you, this is a very simple law in the larger scheme of things, Shivani. That is why I'm stressing on this was a very, very simple thing to get through because it's anyway implemented, as you said, drip by drip. It's already there with the states already have the laws.
Yeah.
Reliance is already procuring from Punjab, from Karnataka, everywhere. Now, what the corporates would be thinking, our biggest concern is infrastructure. Should we invest in India? Look at what Japan has said about the bullet train investments in Maharashtra, that why are the land acquisition delayed? So these street veto, the street protesters, these street hooligans, gunism that I call it, they will start getting more strength because they'll see, okay, we've bent the government once, we can do it again. And that is the original answer to the question you asked, that are there any long-term costs to it? Yes, there are. There are corporate
Yeah.
costs to it, there are investment costs to it, there is an employment cost to it, there is an income cost to it, there is an infrastructure cost to it.
I was
Shivani,
wanting to just one second, Shashank. I wanted to deliberate a little bit on the street veto thing, because now the fear is that for anything and everything, if you can get enough number of people on the street and block the highways, especially to the national capital, you can even run amok. You can even have crimes at those protest sites, all of which we have seen through the farmers' protests. Then somehow you will eventually win. That message in itself is very dangerous, Shashank.
yeah, yeah, of course, that should be dealt with, and that is why I said that a stern message should be given to the agitators that please go away. Now your concern has been addressed. Please go away. I was coming on this reform agenda. So we all know that sector is not here for charity. If they are investing something, they just want some returns because they have also their shareholders, their stakeholders, blah blah. Now in the UPA government, we saw a policy paralysis. Similarly, policy paralysis is bad. Same goes with policy uncertainty.
Yeah.
Just take an example. This laws came back almost a year back. If any major corporate house announces some investments and commit some funds in this agriculture sector based on these laws, how they will feel now?
Yeah.
Their money will go to the drains, and therefore this policy certainty is required because once you make a commitment in terms of development or something, there is an entire chain which has to be built up. The financial commitments are also there, and once it takes time to reap the benefits. It's not that Amazon, Flipkart, or Reliance, Adani, whatever, making the investment and they are start earning profit from the day one. And therefore, they need a
Long
certain
term.
policy is going to continue so that at least they are able to recover a handsome return on their initial investment, and this keeps going on.
Yeah.
And therefore,
All
from
of
a
this is known.
yeah.
Tushar, since you are a political analyst also, let me give you the final question. The fact that this will increase the bravado of street protesters, the power
Absolutely.
of the street veto, this will embolden the opposition in wanting to derail certain reforms that they may have backed in the past themselves, that this will send a larger message of weakness as far as even the strong majority government in power is concerned. Now, all of this is obviously something that the Narendra Modi led government also would have known. Yet they have taken this decision. Do you think there is trouble ahead for them as far as the remainder of this term is
Absolutely.
concerned?
Absolutely. Now, the Prime Minister said, I expect the farmers to go back, start afresh. What do we see an hour later? Rakesh Tiket saying, we are not going anywhere. We are here to ask about the MSPs also. Now, MSP was never a part of the law. Now, my concern is BJP must realize who its actual opposition is. It's not in the parliament anymore. BJP is doing some stupendous work on the ground. That's fine. They're getting them votes. They're winning the elections. But they have to realize that their new enemy, their new threat to their policy making comes from these hooligans on the street. Today, they have captured a national highway, which is essentially the lifeline of North India. Tomorrow, they'll घेराव the new parliament. What if they start going and sitting on Central Vista that we won't allow the construction? This is against public use of funds. I mean, there is no logic to it. But these people, all they need to get is 100 people together, get some women and children, as we saw with Shaheen Bagh, render the police force helpless, and do what they want to. They'll get the media attention. They'll get the same old routine journalists to capture their side of the story. That is my worry. That today the government has given sort of a free hand to street veto. Someone might argue that, oh, this is a different situation. There was the threat of this. There was a threat of that. But at the end, what matters is these people were capturing a highway illegally, as told by the Supreme Court, as told by the Constitution, and yet the government has said, oh, we want to work with you even now. That is a problem. The government should have said, and it has said that we are okay to repelling the farmers. First, you go back. Now, the government has given them all the leverage there was, even repelled the farmers. They are not going anywhere. So again, street veto has one here. As much as we may want to deny it, we may want to structure it some sugar-coated words. The street veto has been given a free hand today, and the reforms post today would be very, very difficult. It would need a lot of good communication. Shashank already highlighted that. But the problem is now BJP will have to also fight policy making on the streets. That's going to be very, very troublesome.
All right. We'll end it on that note. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Let's see what happens ahead. But the jury is still out. Whether this makes the road politically ahead for the BJP till 2024 easier by this balm, so as to say, that has been put out, or will it actually make it tougher for them because the opposition, whether on the street or in parliament, has smelled weakness? Thank you, gentlemen. We'll continue to discuss and deliberate this further.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good one.